The town of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew the creak of their neighbor's porch swing. Nestled at the edge of a pine forest in Washington state, its streets were lined with clapboard houses, their lawns dotted with dandelions and kids' bicycles. The air carried the scent of cut grass and sap, and on clear days, the distant Olympic mountains loomed like a promise. 5-year-old Emily Clark loved those streets. With her ruddy curls bouncing and a gap-toothed grin, she'd skip home from Willow Creek Elementary, her backpack slung over one shoulder, clutching a ragdoll named Daisy. The walk took 5 minutes, 2 streets, Maple to Cedar, a straight shot past Mrs. Larson's rosebushes. But on an overcast afternoon in August 2018, Emily didn't make it home. It was 3:15 p.m. when Emily's mother, Sarah Clark, glanced at the kitchen clock. Emily's school let out at 3 o'clock, and she was never late. Sarah, wiping flour from her hands after starting a batch of cookies, stepped onto the porch. The street was quiet, save for the rustle of pine needles in the breeze. She called Emily's name, her voice sharp against the stillness. No answer. By 3:30, panic set in. Sarah dialed the school. Emily had left on time, waving to her teacher. She called neighbors, then her husband, James, a mechanic whose hands were perpetually stained with grease. "She's not here," Sarah said, her voice cracking. James was home in 10 minutes, his truck screeching into the driveway. The Willow Creek Sheriff's Office mobilized quickly. Sheriff Tom Hargrove, a grizzled man who'd seen more lost hikers than missing kids, organized a search party. Neighbors gathered, their faces pale under the gray sky. They scoured Maple and Cedar streets, checking backyards and alleys. At the edge of town, where Cedar met a fallow field bordered by dense forest, a volunteer found Daisy, Emily's ragdoll, lying in the ditch. Its stitched smile was caked with mud, one button eye missing. Sarah clutched the doll, sobbing, as James stared at the field, his fists clenched. "She wouldn't go out there," he said. "She knows better." The field was a forgotten place, its tall grass swaying under a sky heavy with coming rain. Beyond it, the forest loomed, its pines so thick they swallowed light. A storm hit that evening, rain pounding the grass flat and turning the ditch into a stream. Searchers, armed with flashlights and raincoats, pushed into the field, but the mud sucked at their boots, and the fog rolling off the forest reduced visibility to arm's length. They shouted Emily's name, their voices lost in the downpour. A deputy tripped over a rusted fence post, cursing as he sank into the muck. Somewhere in the forest, a coyote howled, its cry cutting through the rain. By midnight, the search was halted, too dark, too wet, too dangerous. James refused to stop. He trudged through the field, his flashlight beam slicing through the fog. He knew every inch of Willow Creek, having grown up fixing tractors and hunting in the woods. Emily was his world, her giggles when he tossed her in the air, her insistence on Daisy joining them at dinner. He called her name until his throat was raw, the rain soaking his flannel shirt. The sheriff pulled him back to the house at dawn, promising to resume at first light. "We'll find her, James," Hargrove said, but his eyes betrayed doubt. The field and forest were vast, and the storm had erased any tracks. The search continued for weeks. Volunteers combed the field, dogs sniffed along the forest edge, and a helicopter buzzed overhead, its spotlight useless in the dense canopy. The ragdoll was the only clue, its muddy fabric bagged as evidence. The sheriff's office theorized Emily had wandered into the field, perhaps chasing a stray cat, and gotten lost in the forest. But James shook his head. "She's scared of the woods," he said. "She'd never go in there alone." The case grew cold as autumn settled in, the field turning brittle under frost. The police called it a tragic accident, suggesting Emily might have fallen into a hidden creek or been taken by wildlife. James didn't believe it. He began walking the field daily, sketching maps of its ruts and fence lines, noting every anomaly, a bent stalk, a patch of trampled grass. In Seattle, Detective Sam Harper read about Emily's disappearance in a local paper. At 41, Sam was a cold case specialist, his desk cluttered with files of the missing. His own sister, Lily, had vanished 20 years earlier during a camping trip, leaving behind only a scarf. The memory drove him, a quiet ache that never faded. Beside him, Sammy, his 1-year-old cocker spaniel, gnawed on a toy, his chestnut coat gleaming. Sammy was in training, his nose already sharp enough to pick up human scent in mock searches. Sam clipped the article, tucking it into a folder. Emily's case wasn't his yet, but he felt its pull, like a whisper from the field. The town of Willow Creek grew quiet again, but the silence was heavy. James's map spread across his garage, marked with notes like ditch depth and coyote tracks. Sarah kept Daisy on Emily's bed, its single eye staring at the ceiling. The field stood empty, its grass hiding secrets the rain had buried. And somewhere, in the shadow of the pines, the truth waited for a detective and his dog to find it. The rain never seemed to stop in Willow Creek after Emily Clark vanished. It fell in sheets through the autumn of 2018, turning the fallow field at the edge of town into a quagmire of mud and tangled grass. The pines bordering the field stood like silent mourners, their needles glistening under a sky that refused to clear. Search parties dwindled as weeks turned to months, their boots no longer trampling the field's brittle stalks. The town's initial frenzy, neighbors knocking on doors, posters of Emily's gap-toothed smile stapled to every telephone pole, faded into a heavy quiet. By spring 2019, the sheriff's office had boxed up the case file, labeling it a tragic accident. Emily, they concluded, had wandered into the forest and succumbed to the elements, her small body lost to a creek or a coyote's jaws. But James Clark, Emily's father, carried the weight of her absence like a stone in his chest, and he refused to let the field keep its secrets. James's garage became his war room. The air smelled of motor oil and sawdust, the walls lined with shelves of tools he'd once used to fix tractors. Now, those shelves held rolls of butcher paper, unfurled across a workbench, covered in hand-drawn maps of the field and forest. He sketched every ditch, every rusted fence post, every patch of trampled grass, annotating them with notes like, Shallow Creek, 2 feet deep, or, Coyote Den, North Edge. His hands, calloused from years at the auto shop, trembled as he drew, his eyes fixed on the spot where Daisy, Emily's ragdoll, had been found. He walked the field daily, his boots sinking into the mud, searching for anything, a scrap of her blue jacket, a lost hair tie. Neighbors whispered about his obsession, their pitying glances following him through town. Sarah, his wife, stopped baking cookies, the kitchen now silent except for the creak of the floorboards as she paced, clutching Daisy's muddy fabric. The sheriff's office tried to move on. Sheriff Hargrove, his face etched with lines from too many sleepless nights, met James weekly, listening to his theories with a patience that masked frustration. James insisted Emily hadn't wandered off. She was scared of the woods, he'd say, his voice hoarse. She'd cling to my hand just walking past that field. He brought Hargrove scraps of evidence, a broken twig, a flattened patch of grass, but they led nowhere. The forest was too vast, its underbrush too thick, and the field's shifting mud erased tracks faster than they could be followed. A local hunter mentioned seeing an old school bus, half hidden in the field's tall grass, but a search found nothing but rust and weeds. The case grew cold, the file buried under newer reports, and Willow Creek tried to forget. In Seattle, Detective Sam Harper felt the pull of Emily's case like a low hum. At 41, he was a fixture in the cold case unit, his office a clutter of files and coffee mugs, the walls pinned with photos of the missing. His own sister, Lily, had disappeared 20 years earlier, leaving behind a scarf tangled in a bramble during a camping trip in the Cascades. The memory was a splinter under his skin, driving him to cases like Emily's. He kept her news clipping pinned to a corkboard, her ruddy curls and bright eyes staring out from the grainy photo. Beside him, Sammy, his cocker spaniel, was growing into his role. At 2 years old in 2019, Sammy was already a prodigy, his chestnut coat gleaming as he sniffed out human scent in training drills. During a mock search that year, Sam watched Sammy bound through a park, nose to the ground, unearthing a buried glove in minutes. "Good boy," Sam murmured, scratching Sammy's ears, his mind drifting to Emily. The case wasn't his, but he called Hargrove, offering his expertise. "Not yet," Hargrove said. "We're still hoping she'll turn up." Years passed, each one heavier than the last. By 2025, Willow Creek had changed. New families moved in, unaware of the girl who'd vanished between Maple and Cedar. The field grew wilder, its grass swallowing old paths. James's maps now covered his garage walls, a sprawling tapestry of ink and desperation. He'd interviewed hunters, farmers, even kids who played near the field, chasing rumors of strange lights or footsteps. One story stuck with him, a retired teacher who swore she'd seen a man lurking near the field the day Emily disappeared, his coat stained with grease. James jotted it down, but the man was gone, a drifter passing through. Sarah, worn thin by grief, stopped leaving the house, Daisy now a permanent fixture on Emily's bed, its single button eye a silent accusation. Sam, now 48, had solved 3 cold cases since Emily's disappearance, each one a small victory against the ache of Lily's loss. Sammy, at 5, was his partner in every sense, his soulful brown eyes catching every flicker of Sam's mood. During a case in Tacoma, Sammy had nosed out a buried shoe, leading to a missing hiker's remains. The moment stuck with Sam, Sammy's ears perked, tail wagging furiously as he pawed the earth. "You're my secret weapon," Sam said, tossing him a treat. He pulled Emily's file again, reading James's latest letter to the sheriff, enclosed with a map marked, "Possible hideout near creek." Sam called Hargrove again. "Anything new?" he asked. Hargrove sighed. "Just James's maps. He won't quit." Sam hung up, stroking Sammy's head. "We'll get there, boy," he said, the clipping of Emily's face still pinned above his desk. The field remained silent, its secrets buried under layers of mud and time. The forest beyond whispered with coyotes and wind, its pines hiding paths no one had walked in years. James's maps grew more intricate, his hope more fragile. In Willow Creek, Emily's name faded from conversation, but her absence lingered, a shadow over the town. And somewhere, in the tall grass or the dark woods, a clue waited, a clue that would draw Sam and Sammy into the heart of the mystery, where the field's silence would finally break. The field at the edge of Willow Creek was a sea of tall grass in September 2025, swaying under a sky bruised with clouds. The air carried the sharp bite of pine and the faint musk of damp earth, a reminder of the forest looming just beyond. 7 years had passed since Emily Clark vanished, and the town had settled into an uneasy quiet, her name whispered only in hushed tones. But on a crisp morning, that quiet shattered. Tom Willard, a local retiree out for his daily walk, pushed through the field's overgrown stalks, his dog, a scruffy terrier, yipping at his heels. Near the ditch where Emily's ragdoll, Daisy, had been found, Willard's foot caught on something hard. He knelt, brushing aside mud and grass, and unearthed a rusted metal edge. It was the door of an old school bus, half buried in the earth, its yellow paint flaked away. Scratched into the metal, faint but unmistakable, were the letters, E.C. Willard's heart thudded. He called Sheriff Hargrove, and within hours, the field was alive with deputies, their radios crackling in the still air. The bus was a relic, its windows shattered, vines curling through the frame like veins. It sat in a hollow, hidden by grass so tall it had escaped notice during the 2018 searches. The interior smelled of mildew and rust, the seats torn, littered with leaves and mouse droppings. Hargrove's team found a child's hair tie, blue with a plastic star, tucked under a seat. It matched the description of one Emily wore. But it was the scratched letters, E.C., that turned the find from curious to chilling. Hargrove knew this was beyond his small department. He made the call he'd avoided for years, dialing Detective Sam Harper in Seattle. "We need you," he said, his voice tight. "Bring the dog." Sam Harper arrived at dusk, the field bathed in the golden haze of late summer. At 48, he carried the weight of countless cases, his face lined but his eyes sharp with purpose. Beside him, Sammy, his 5-year-old cocker spaniel, bounded from the truck, his chestnut coat catching the fading light. Sammy's nose twitched, already parsing the air, pine, mud, and something else, something human. Sam's heart quickened as he surveyed the field, the forest's dark edge looming like a wall. He'd read Emily's file 100 times, the image of her ruddy curls burned into his mind. His own sister, Lily, lost 20 years ago, lingered in his thoughts, her scarf still tucked in his desk drawer. This case felt personal, a chance to answer a question the field had held too long. Sammy led the way to the bus, his ears perked, tail wagging furiously. Inside, he whined, pawing at a rusted floor panel. Sam knelt, flashlight in hand, and pried it open. Beneath was a small compartment, stuffed with a torn backpack, faded blue, like Emily's. Inside, a waterlogged notebook held childish drawings, stick figures, a house, a star. Sam's throat tightened. "Good boy," he murmured, scratching Sammy's ears. The notebook wasn't enough to confirm Emily's presence, but the hair tie and EC scratched on the door were screams from the past. This wasn't an accident anymore. At the sheriff's office, Sam met James Clark, Emily's father. James was thinner now, his face hollowed by 7 years of grief, his hands clutching a roll of maps. The garage maps Sam had heard about were a masterpiece, sprawling sketches of the field, marked with notes like ditch flow pattern and old path to creek. James's voice was steady but raw. "She didn't wander off," he said, spreading a map on the table. "Someone took her. That bus, it's not random." Sam studied the map, its lines tracing paths invisible to the untrained eye. He saw James's pain, a mirror to his own, and felt a kinship. "We'll find out what happened," Sam promised, Sammy nudging his leg as if in agreement. Hargrove briefed Sam on the bus. It had belonged to the school district decades ago, abandoned after budget cuts. No one knew how it ended up in the field, buried like a secret. Local rumors swirled, a drifter had lived there, or kids used it for parties. Sam's mind raced. The EC could be Emily's initials, a desperate mark from a terrified child. Or was it something else, a taunt, a clue from someone who knew more? Sammy, sniffing the backpack, whined again, catching a faint scent Sam couldn't place. "What is it, boy?" Sam asked, his voice low. Sammy's nose led him back to the bus door, where the scratched letters gleamed under his flashlight. That night, Sam and Sammy stayed in a motel on Willow Creek's Main Street, the neon sign buzzing outside their window. Sam spread James's map on the bed, tracing the field's paths. Sammy curled up at his feet, his warmth a quiet comfort. The bus was a breakthrough, but it raised more questions. Who had hidden it? Why was Emily's hair tie there? And what did EC mean? Sam thought of Lily, her scarf tangled in a bramble, and felt the old ache. He stroked Sammy's ears, the spaniel's eyes meeting his. "We're getting closer," he said, though the field's silence loomed large, its secret still buried in the grass. The town watched as Sam and Sammy worked, whispers spreading about the detective and his dog. James stood at the field's edge, his maps clutched tight, hope flickering for the first time in years. The forest beyond the field rustled, its pines hiding paths no one had walked since Emily vanished. And in the bus's rusted heart, the scratched letters waited, a cry from the past that Sam and Sammy were determined to answer. The Willow Creek field was a restless sea of grass under a September sky, its edges blurring into the dark pines of the forest beyond. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of wet earth and pine sap, and a faint mist clung to the ground, curling around the rusted frame of the abandoned school bus. Detective Sam Harper stood beside it, his breath visible in the morning chill, watching Sammy, his cocker spaniel, sniffed the bus's door where EC was scratched into the metal. Sammy's nose twitched, his chestnut coat damp with dew, as he pawed at the ground, whining softly. The discovery of the bus, Emily Clark's hair tie, and her backpack had shifted the case from a cold accident to a live investigation. Sam knew the field held more secrets, and he was determined to pry them loose. Sam sent the backpack and hair tie to the state crime lab in Seattle, requesting a rush on forensic analysis. He needed something concrete to tie Emily to the bus beyond the haunting EC. While waiting, he and Sammy returned to the field. James Clark's map spread across the hood of Sam's truck. The maps were meticulous, every ditch, stump, and creek bed marked with James's precise handwriting: soft ground, avoid, old tire tracks, east side. Sam traced a path leading from the bus to a creek that snaked into the forest. "You've been busy," he told James, who stood nearby, his eyes fixed on the field. James nodded, his voice low. 7 years. Had to do something. Sam saw the weight of those years in James's hunched shoulders, a mirror to his own loss, his sister, Lily, gone without a trace. At the lab, forensic technician Dr. Leena Patel called Sam with results. "The backpack's fabric has pollen grains, unique ones, from a rare wildflower, fireweed, that grows in disturbed soil near water. We also found traces of motor oil, not your standard car stuff, more like heavy machinery." Sam scribbled notes, his pulse quickening. "The hair tie," Patel continued, "has a single strand of hair. Matches Emily's DNA from a toothbrush her parents provided." Sam thanked her, his mind racing. Fireweed and motor oil narrowed the search to a specific part of the field, likely near the creek James had mapped. But it was Sammy who pushed the breakthrough forward. Back at the bus, Sammy's nose caught something new. He darted to the rear, where the grass was flattened, and began digging, his paws flinging dirt. Sam knelt beside him, unearthing a small metal canister, rusted but intact, coated in a sticky residue. Sammy whined, his tail wagging furiously, as Sam bagged it. "What've you got, boy?" he murmured, scratching Sammy's ears. The lab confirmed the residue was hydraulic fluid, consistent with heavy machinery, maybe a tractor or old logging equipment. The fireweed pollen on the canister matched Patel's findings, pointing to a patch of disturbed soil near the creek, hidden by dense grass. Sam requested a LiDAR-equipped drone from the state police, a tool he'd used in a Tacoma case to map hidden terrain. The drone buzzed over the field, its lasers piercing the grass to reveal a faint anomaly, a rectangular depression, barely visible, about 50 yards from the bus. It was too precise to be natural, possibly a buried structure or old equipment cache. James's map marked the spot as Creek Bend, soft ground, with a note about tire tracks from years ago. Sam and Sammy headed there, the field's mud sucking at Sam's boots. Sammy moved with purpose, his nose low, alerting to a patch of fireweed growing in a cluster. The flowers were vibrant pink, their stems bent as if trodden recently. Sammy pawed at the soil, his ears perked, and Sam felt the ground shift slightly underfoot, a hollow space beneath. Digging carefully, Sam uncovered a wooden hatch, half-rotted, hidden under grass and dirt. It was locked, but Sammy's insistent sniffing led Sam to a loose board, revealing a small cache, a rusted wrench, a coil of rope, and a child's drawing, faded but showing a stick figure with ruddy curls. Sam's heart sank. It was Emily's, likely from the notebook found in the bus. The wrench had traces of hydraulic fluid, linking it to the canister. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a deliberate concealment, tied to whoever had used the bus. Sam called Hargrove, requesting a team to excavate the site properly. "We're closing in," he said, his voice steady but urgent. James joined them, his face pale as he saw the drawing. "She loved drawing herself with stars," he whispered, his fingers tracing the paper. Sam placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture heavy with shared grief. He thought of Lily, her scarf a ghost in his memory, and pushed the thought aside. The field was talking now, its secret surfacing, but the forest beyond loomed, its shadows hiding the truth about Sammy sat at Sam's feet, his eyes fixed on the hatch, as if sensing the answers lay just below. That evening, Sam and Sammy returned to the motel, the drawing and wrench bagged as evidence. Sam spread James's map on the table, marking the hatch's location. The field was no longer just a backdrop, it was a maze of clues, each one pointing to a person who'd used it to hide something dark. Sammy curled up on the bed, his warmth grounding Sam as he studied the map. The light, our data, the pollen, Sammy's nose, all were pieces of a puzzle, and the hatch was the next step. But the scratched EC lingered in Sam's mind. Was it Emily's cry for help, or something more sinister? As the motel's neon sign buzzed outside, Sam scratched Sammy's ears, whispering, "We're getting there, boy." The field's silence was breaking, but its full story was still buried, waiting for them to dig deeper. The Willow Creek field was a restless expanse under a sky heavy with clouds, the tall grass whispering secrets as the wind stirred. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, the forest beyond casting long shadows that seemed to watch. Detective Sam Harper stood by the wooden hatch uncovered near the creek, its rotted boards pried open to reveal a shallow pit beneath. Sammy, his cocker spaniel, paced nearby, his chestnut coat flecked with mud, nose twitching as he caught a faint scent in the damp air. The discovery of the abandoned school bus with EC scratched into its door, Emily Clark's hair tie, backpack, and now this hidden cache had turned the field into a crime scene. Sam felt the weight of 7 years pressing down, the hope of answers tangled with the fear of what they might reveal. The pit beneath the hatch was cramped, barely 3 feet deep, lined with warped plywood. Inside, Sam's flashlight illuminated a grim collection, a rusted wrench, a coil of rope, and a plastic box containing a child's bracelet, blue beads with a single star charm, matching the hair tie found in the bus. Tucked among the items was another drawing, its edges curled from moisture, depicting a stick figure with ruddy curls holding a ragdoll. Sam's stomach twisted, it was Emily's, unmistakably. Sammy whined, pawing at the box, his ears perked as he caught a trace of something sharp, like motor oil mixed with something sweeter, almost floral. "Good boy," Sam murmured, bagging the items. The bracelet and drawing were personal, intimate, tying Emily to this hidden place. But the wrench and rope hinted at something darker, a purpose beyond a child's play. Sam sent the new evidence to Dr. Lena Patel at the State Crime Lab. Her voice crackled over the phone later that day. "The bracelet has Emily's DNA, same hair sample as the hair tie. The rope has traces of hydraulic fluid, matching the canister from the bus. But here's the odd part, the drawing has a faint residue of lavender oil, not native to the area. It's processed, like from a perfume or soap." Sam jotted it down, his mind racing. Lavender oil suggested someone else's presence, someone who'd been in contact with Emily's things. The hydraulic fluid tied the pit to the bus, and James Clark's maps had marked this exact spot as Creek Bend, disturbed soil. The field was no longer just a backdrop, it was a stage for something deliberate, calculated. James arrived at the site, his face ashen as he saw the bracelet. "She made it at summer camp," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Strung those beads herself." He clutched his maps, their edges worn from years of handling, and pointed to a faint line leading from the creek to an old logging trail in the forest. "There were tire tracks here once," he said. "Thought it was just hunters, but maybe not." Sam nodded, studying the map. James's obsession had paid off, his notes guiding them to this hidden cache. But the lavender oil gnawed at Sam, its presence was out of place, a clue to someone who'd been careful but not careful enough. Sam and Sammy returned to the bus, now cordoned off with yellow tape. Sheriff Hargrove's deputies had interviewed locals, unearthing a name, Roy Tanner, a reclusive mechanic who'd lived on the town's outskirts until a few years ago. Tanner was known for fixing heavy machinery, tractors, log skidders, using hydraulic fluid like that found in the pit. He'd been spotted near the field around the time Emily vanished, his truck parked on the logging trail. A retired teacher, Mrs. Larson, recalled him as odd, always fidgeting with a rag soaked in oil, smelling faintly of flowers. Sam's pulse quickened. Lavender oil, hydraulic fluid, Tanner was a fit. Hargrove pulled records. Tanner had moved away in 2019, but his last known address was a trailer near the forest, not far from the field. Sammy's instincts drove the next find. While sniffing around the bus, he alerted to a loose floorboard near the driver's seat, his paws scratching frantically. Sam pried it up, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small ledger, its pages brittle, listing dates and numbers, possibly payments for repaired equipment, but some entries mentioned delivery and field drop. Tucked in the ledger was a faded photo of a girl with ruddy curls, smiling at a fair. It was Emily. Sam's hands shook as he bagged it, Sammy nudging his leg as if sensing his tension. "We've got him, boy," Sam said, though the ledger's cryptic entries raised more questions. Was Tanner hiding equipment, or something worse? That evening, Sam met James at the sheriff's office, showing him the photo. James's eyes filled with tears, but his jaw set with resolve. Tanner knew the field, he said. He'd park there, fixing loggers' trucks. If he hurt her, his voice broke, and Sam gripped his shoulder, the gesture heavy with their shared pain. Sam thought of Lily, her scarf a ghost in his memory, and pushed forward. "We'll find him," he promised. James's maps, now pinned to the office wall, showed Tanner's old trailer site, a dot near the logging trail. It was a lead, but the forest's shadows loomed large, hiding Tanner's tracks. Sam and Sammy walked the field at dusk, the grass rustling underfoot, the air heavy with the promise of rain. Sammy's nose stayed low, catching traces of oil and lavender, his tail a metronome of focus. The ledger, the bracelet, the drawing, all pointed to Tanner, but the GC on the bus door lingered, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Was it Emily's desperate mark, or Tanner's taunt? Sam crouched beside Sammy, stroking his ears. "You're leading us there," he said, the spaniel's eyes meeting his. The field was speaking now, its secrets rising like mist, but the truth about Emily, and Tanner, lay just out of reach, buried in the forest's dark heart. The Willow Creek field lay under a shroud of early morning fog, its tall grass bending under the weight of dew. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and wet soil, the forest beyond a dark silhouette that seemed to pulse with secrets. Detective Sam Harper stood at the edge of the creek bed, near the hidden hatch where Sammy, his cocker spaniel, had uncovered Emily Clark's bracelet and drawing. Sammy's chestnut coat was damp, his nose low as he sniffed the ground, tail wagging with quiet intensity. The school bus, the hidden cache, and now the ledger and photo found inside pointed to Roy Tanner, a reclusive mechanic with ties to the field. But the scratched EC on the bus door and the lavender oil residue on Emily's drawing gnawed at Sam, hinting at layers yet to be peeled back. 7 years after Emily's disappearance, the field was yielding clues, but each one deepened the mystery. Sam sat in Sheriff Hargrove's office, the ledger spread open on the desk. Its pages listed dates, amounts, and cryptic notes: field drop, August 15, 18, delivery, $200, written in a hurried scrawl. The date matched the day Emily vanished. Sam's pulse quickened as he cross-referenced James Clark's maps, pinned to the wall like a patchwork of grief. James, his eyes hollow but fierce, pointed to a mark near the logging trail. Tanner's trailer was here, he said, tapping the map. He'd park his truck by the field, fixing loggers' equipment. Always smelled like oil and something else, like flowers. Sam nodded, recalling Dr. Patel's report on the lavender oil. The connection to Tanner was tightening, but the GC felt like a loose thread, tugging at something bigger. Sammy's instincts drove the next lead. Back at the field, Sam let him roam near the bus, his nose tracing invisible paths through the grass. Sammy froze by a patch of fireweed, his ears perked, and began digging frantically. Sam knelt beside him, unearthing a small metal box, rusted shut. Inside was a keychain with a single key, engraved with a tiny star, another echo of Emily's bracelet and hair tie. Sammy whined, sniffing the key, catching the same lavender scent. Sam bagged it, his mind racing. The key looked industrial, possibly for a lock on Tanner's trailer or a piece of machinery. "You're a genius, boy," Sam said, scratching Sammy's ears, the spaniel's tail thumping against the ground. The box was sent to the lab, where Dr. Patel confirmed traces of hydraulic fluid and lavender oil, tying it to the bus and the hidden cache. Sam and Hargrove tracked down Tanner's last known address, a derelict trailer site near the logging trail. The trailer was gone, but the clearing was littered with rusted tools and oil cans, the ground scarred with tire tracks. James's map had marked this spot as Tanner's Lot, abandoned 19. Sam walked the perimeter, Sammy at his side, nose low. The spaniel alerted to a patch of disturbed soil, where Sam found a buried oil rag, stiff with grease and faintly scented with lavender. It was a small find, but it screamed Tanner's presence. Sam pictured him here, wiping his hands, maybe watching Emily skip down Cedar Street. The thought made his stomach churn, a shadow of his own loss, Lily, vanished without a trace, stirring in his chest. James joined them, his face etched with a mix of hope and dread. He shared a memory, his voice soft but heavy. Emily loved stars. She'd sit on the porch, pointing out constellations, saying they were her friends in the sky. That bracelet, the hair tie, she made them to match her star friends. Sam listened, his throat tight, thinking of Lily's scarf, its pattern of tiny moons. She was special, Sam said, meeting James's eyes. "We're going to find out what happened." James nodded, clutching his maps like a lifeline. The moment bonded them, two men tethered by loss, chasing answers in a field that refused to speak. The investigation hit obstacles. The fog rolled in thicker, cloaking the field and making searches treacherous. A deputy slipped in the creek, twisting an ankle, and the forest's dense underbrush slowed progress. Sam sent the key to the lab, hoping it unlocked something literal, a shed, a vehicle, or metaphorical, like Tanner's motive. Dr. Patel called with an update, the keys for an old padlock, common in storage units or heavy equipment. No DNA, but more lavender oil. Sam frowned. Lavender wasn't just a scent, it was a signature, pointing to someone careful, deliberate. Tanner's profile was taking shape, a loner, skilled with machines, hiding something in the field. But why Emily? And why the DC? Sam's doubts crept in, fueled by his own past. Lily's case had no clues, no scratched initials, just a scarf and endless questions. Was he chasing ghosts again? Sammy sensed his mood, nudging his leg with a soft whine. Sam knelt, stroking the spaniel's ears. "You're keeping me grounded, boy," he said. They returned to the motel, James's map spread across the table. Sam marked the trailer site, the bus, the hatch, dots forming a pattern, but not a picture. The ledger's field drop entries hinted at illegal activity, maybe Tanner was fencing stolen parts or worse. The lavender oil suggested a personal touch, someone close to the crime. As night fell, the field stood silent, its grass swaying under the weight of secrets. The forest beyond whispered with wind and unseen creatures, its paths hiding Tanner's tracks. Sam and Sammy sat on the motel bed, the keychain star glinting under the lamp. The DC scratched on the bus door loomed in Sam's mind. Was it Emily's desperate plea or Tanner's mark of guilt? Sammy rested his head on Sam's knee, his eyes steady. "We're close," Sam whispered, though the field's shadows held tight to the truth, daring them to dig deeper. The Willow Creek field was a restless expanse under a slate-gray sky, the tall grass bending in a cold September wind. The air carried the sharp tang of pine and the faint, oily scent of machinery, a reminder of the secrets buried in the earth. Detective Sam Harper stood near the rusted school bus, its scratched EC glinting dully in the fading light. Sammy, his cocker spaniel, paced beside him, his chestnut coat flecked with mud, nose twitching as he caught traces of lavender and hydraulic fluid. The evidence, Emily Clark's bracelet, drawings, the ledger, and the key, pointed to Roy Tanner, the reclusive mechanic who'd once haunted the field's edges. 7 years after Emily's disappearance, Sam felt the case closing in, the field's silence breaking under the weight of truth. But the EC and the lavender oil still gnawed at him, a puzzle piece that refused to fit. Sam and Sheriff Hargrove had tracked Tanner to a rundown cabin 30 miles from Willow Creek, tucked in a clearing off a logging road. The cabin was a squat, weathered structure, its yard littered with rusted engine parts and oil cans. James Clark's maps had been crucial, marking the logging trail as a route Tanner used to haul equipment. Sam approached with Sammy at his side, the spaniel's ears perked, sensing tension in the air. Hargrove's deputies flanked the cabin, hands on holsters, as Sam knocked. The door creaked open, revealing Tanner, a wiry man in his 50s, with grease-stained hands and eyes that darted like a trapped animal. He smelled faintly of lavender, a scent that made Sam's stomach tighten. Inside, the cabin was a mess of tools, oil rags, and a single photo on the wall, a young girl, not Emily, but similar enough to unsettle Sam. "Roy Tanner," Sam said, his voice steady, "we need to talk about Emily Clark." He laid out the evidence on a rickety table, the ledger's field drop entries from August 2018, the bracelet with Emily's DNA, the key with lavender oil, the wrench and rope from the hidden hatch. Tanner's face paled, his fingers rubbing an oil rag reflexively, the faint floral scent rising. Sammy growled softly, his eyes fixed on Tanner, sensing agitation. Sam gestured to the ledger. "This places you in the field when Emily vanished. The hydraulic fluid, the lavender, it's all over her things. Talk." Tanner's hands shook, but he stayed silent. Sam pressed, holding up the photo of Emily from the bus. "She was 5, Roy. 5. Her parents are still waiting." Sammy edged closer, his nose low, and suddenly lunged, barking at a loose floorboard near Tanner's chair. Sam pulled it up, revealing a hidden trapdoor. Beneath was a small cache, more oil rags, a vial of lavender oil, and a child's shoe, blue with a star pattern. Sam's heart sank, it matched Emily's. Tanner's shoulders slumped, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean to hurt her." The confession came in halting bursts. Tanner had been using the bus as a drop point for stolen machinery parts, selling them to loggers under the table. On August 15, 2018, Emily, skipping home from school, had wandered into the field, chasing a stray cat. She'd stumbled on the bus, catching Tanner unloading parts. "She saw me," he said, his eyes distant. "Said she'd tell her dad." I panicked, grabbed her arm too hard. She fell, hit her head on a wrench. His voice cracked. "She wasn't moving. I buried her near the creek, under the fireweed." Sam's jaw clenched, thinking of Lily, his sister, lost to another's mistake. Sammy stayed close, his growl low, preventing Tanner from bolting as deputies cuffed him. Sam asked about the DC scratched on the bus door. Tanner frowned, shaking his head. "I didn't do that. I don't know." Sam pressed, but Tanner's confusion seemed genuine, leaving the mark a haunting enigma. Was it Emily's desperate act, or someone else's? The lavender oil, Tanner admitted, came from a homemade soap he used, a habit from his mother. It explained the residue, but not the DC. Sam felt a chill, the case was breaking open, but a shadow lingered. Hargrove's team searched the creek bed, guided by Tanner's confession. Sammy led the way, his nose tracing the fireweed patch James had marked on his maps. The spaniel stopped, pawing at the soil, and the deputies dug, unearthing a small bundle wrapped in a tarp. Inside were Emily's remains, her blue jacket faded but intact. Sam stood back, letting James approach. James fell to his knees, sobbing, clutching the jacket. "My girl," he whispered. Sam turned away, his own grief for Lily surfacing, Sammy nudging his leg as if to anchor him. That night, Sam sat in the motel, Sammy curled at his feet. The evidence was airtight: Tanner's confession, the DNA, the lavender oil. But the EC scratched on the bus door gnawed at him, a question mark in an otherwise closed case. He spread James's map on the table, its lines a testament to a father's love. Sammy rested his head on Sam's knee, his eyes steady. "You saved us today," Sam said, scratching the spaniel's ears. The field had given up its truth, but the EC lingered, a whisper of doubt in the silence, urging Sam to keep searching. The Willow Creek field stood still under a late September dusk, its tall grass gilded by the fading sun. The air was cool, laced with the scent of pine and damp earth, the forest beyond a dark silhouette whispering with the rustle of leaves. Detective Sam Harper sat on a fallen log at the field's edge, a small campfire crackling before him, its warmth pushing back the evening chill. Sammy, his cocker spaniel, lay at his feet, his chestnut coat glowing in the firelight, soulful brown eyes fixed on Sam. The case of Emily Clark, missing for 7 years, had finally broken open. Roy Tanner's confession had led to her remains, buried beneath the fireweed near the creek, and the evidence, her bracelet, drawings, the ledger, had sealed his fate. But the scratched EC on the school bus door lingered like a ghost, a final mystery that refused to resolve. The excavation had been careful, almost reverent. Sheriff Hargrove's team, guided by Sammy's nose and James Clark's maps, uncovered Emily's small form wrapped in a tarp, her blue jacket faded but recognizable. James had collapsed beside her, clutching the jacket, his sobs echoing across the field. Sam had stood back, giving him space, his own heart heavy with the memory of Lily, his sister, lost 20 years ago to an unsolved case. The bracelet with its star charm was returned to James, a small piece of Emily to hold on to. At the sheriff's office, Sam watched James cradle it, his fingers tracing the beads. "She loved stars," James said, his voice soft but steady. "Said they watched over her." Sam nodded, thinking of Lily's scarf, its moons a silent promise he'd never kept. Tanner's trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming: Emily's DNA on the bracelet and hair tie, the hydraulic fluid and lavender oil tying him to the bus and hidden cash, the ledger's entries marking his illegal deals. He confessed to manslaughter, admitting he'd panicked when Emily saw his operation, his grip too tight, her fall too sudden. The judge sentenced him to life without parole, the courtroom silent except for Sarah Clark's quiet weeping. James stood beside her, his maps now folded away, their purpose fulfilled. Willow Creek exhaled, the weight of Emily's absence lifting, though the town would never feel whole again. The EC on the bus door, though, remained a shadow. Tanner swore he hadn't scratched it, his confusion convincing enough to plant doubt. Sam revisited the bus, running his fingers over the letters, Sammy sniffing the metal as if searching for answers. Was it Emily's final act, a desperate mark made as she realized her fate? Or had someone else been there, a witness or accomplice Tanner never mentioned? Sam questioned locals, scoured James's maps for clues, but found nothing. Dr. Patel at the lab analyzed the scratches, confirming they were made with a sharp tool, possibly a key, but no fingerprints remained. The mystery hung unresolved, a thread of realism in a case tied too neatly, reminding Sam that not every question had an answer. The field, once a menacing maze, felt quieter now. Sam walked its paths one last time, Sammy bounding ahead, chasing a stray leaf. The fireweed patches glowed pink in the twilight, a testament to Emily's brief life. James had planted a small garden near his house, filled with fireweed and star-shaped flowers, a memorial to his daughter. Sarah joined him there, Daisy the ragdoll now resting on a shelf beside Emily's bed, its single button eye no longer an accusation but a keepsake. The town began to heal, though whispers of the bus and its haunting EC lingered in diner conversations, a story to pass down. Sam sat by the campfire, the field stretching before him like a canvas of memory. Sammy's head rested on his knee, the spaniel's warmth a steady anchor. Sam's thoughts drifted to Lily, her scarf still tucked in his desk drawer, her case as cold as ever. Solving Emily's case hadn't erased that ache, but it had sharpened his resolve. "We did right by her, boy," he said, scratching Sammy's ears. Sammy looked up, his eyes catching the firelight, as if agreeing. The field had given up its truth, but the GC was a reminder of the limits of justice, a question mark etched in metal and memory. As the fire died to embers, Sam stood, Sammy rising with him. The forest beyond was silent, its secrets safe for now. Sam clipped Sammy's leash, though the spaniel didn't need it, their bond stronger than any tether. They walked back to the truck, the field fading into darkness behind them. Another case waited in Seattle, another name, another chance to find answers. Sam glanced at Sammy, his partner, his compass. "Ready for the next one?" he asked, a quiet smile breaking through. Sammy's tail wagged, and they drove into the night, leaving the field of silent steps behind, its final mystery unresolved but its story complete.